for you to be able to work this kind of magic will be very relieving for your heart. So for you, it won't even be the act of does it work? It will be the exploration of becoming one with it so it works. And you'll find that your heart will receive a great deal of freedom from this, joyous freedom. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. You'll have an interesting time researching it. Yes. They're saying you like to research. If it
like to look.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, someone's singing. All right. What is this? Okay, again, we're heading over to Europe. Germany. Some town begins with an L. You're like an opera singer. Beautiful woman. White powdered wig. So this looks like almost like a Mozart type timeline, or somewhere between Mozart and Beethoven, somewhere in there. And European history is not my thing, but I'm seeing you look almost like a Dresden doll, you know, blue dress, very tightly corseted. But okay, and she's saying this is why everyone thinks that female opera singers have such bosoms, because we're not going to tighten up the top part of our corset. So we go for, she said she went for the small waist at the bottom, but she kept it very loose at the top. She had a double corset, so she corseted the bottom to suck in her gut, and that helped remind her to be up. But then the top was open, so she always looked overflowing. And then she said, of course, if you wish to catch anyone's eye, you want to be a little overflowing. She's her name begins with a D. She's feisty. She's very feisty. And she said, so you know already why she's with you, because you're feisty and you needed some feisty sidekicks whispering mischief in your ear throughout your life, encouraging you, because you got into too much trouble when you were young for your nature, and no one wanted you to quiet down. They wanted you to remain feisty, so you have like a few guides who are constantly like encouraging you to, go for it. And D, it's coming. Okay, so I'm asking her, share why she's here. Why is she coming forward? What is, and okay, so her father was a glass blower, and her mother just maintained their home. She said they had two like scullery maid level maids, but the mother had 9 children of her own, but then like 10 more children that they had to take in from like family members who passed and things like that. So it keeps coming up something like dirndl to me, but she's laughing that I'm not getting it right, but it's something similar to that. But she grew up with all these children, and all of them had to work. She's laughing at how like spoiled modern day children are, because she says when you're basically one of 20 and your father's a glass blower, you do everything you have to do, and you don't like talk back or you get beaten faster than you can blink. And that's just the way it was. Um, so when she was 8 years old, she was sent with her older sisters to do like maid work at the big house, they're calling it. And you know, and so this is you, and I'm going to call her Durndal till a bit till the a better name comes through. Um, she's only like 8 years old, and she's been taken to do some like whatever odd jobs need to be done. And she doesn't know any better, so she sings while she's working because, she's 8 and she's doing work she doesn't want to do and she's bored. So she's there like she's showing like brushing out the fireplaces and setting wood and uh, she's showing taking flowers out of vases and scrubbing the insides of the vases. She said some of these vases were almost as big as she was, but she did not dare harm anything. She was so careful. And what else? She said she did some like work outdoors of like assisting the gardeners with um, showing almost like trimming, edging, some weeding. That's it. Um, you know, she said basically the work no one else wanted to do got dumped on the younger children. Um, and so she's singing because she thinks there's no one around, and she's like brushing out a fireplace. And she had to lay all these cloths down so nothing would fly out onto any like fancy furniture or carpet. And a man who was a guest of the house, um, who he was a composer and he was staying as a guest of the house. She's saying that's what like great artists did at the time. They would go from like, because many of them lived in like little dust, drafty attics or the like. But if you were truly a great artist, you didn't need a home. You would stay in this manner, that manner. If someone wanted you to compose a piece for them or do a portrait for them, you would stay in their home while you're doing it. So most of the artists didn't need to have their own home. Because of course it's not like you can commute each day to someone's estate. You go there and you stay. And then you find more and more reasons for them to keep you there. Or to then recommend you to another estate where you would go and stay. So he was a composer. There was going to be a ball in like 3 months' time, and he was composing original music, and then it was going to be performed at this ball. Which is like a really big deal. And he heard her singing, and he was like impressed that you had like perfect pitch and this like beautiful lark-like voice. So he bought you. He paid your parents like what would be the modern day equivalent of like $50? She's saying more like $100, and you were his. Like basically his apprentice. And he never abused you in any way, except like occasionally like kicking you or switching you when he felt you were like misbehaving. But for the most part, you were very better treated than in your home. And you basically assisted him with everything that he needed. And a lot of times you'd copy, like he'd compose, but his compositions were all scratched out and, with arrows and this and that. And then you would copy it perfectly. And when he would be practicing duets, you would be singing, like you assisted him with that, but you also assisted him with, as you're saying, every 8-year-old knows how to bake bread. Every 8-year-old knows how to cook a meal. Every 8-year-old knows how to make clothing. So very different from modern day 8-year-olds. um, so you basically kept house for him and assisted him. And when he wrote like little operettas or things like that, he would have a role for you because that way he knew there would be at least one person who had perfect pitch singing. Um, Oftentimes when he would go to an estate to perform, he didn't have his own group that came. It was like favored local band or quintet or whatever, and he never knew what he was going to get. Um, so he said it was actually a magical childhood. Um, that he never boxed your ears, which I guess is a big deal. He never whipped you, which is a big deal. Um, he always treated you with respect and raised you to respect yourself. Sometimes he got drunk, but then he would just need you to help undress him and put him to bed. He was just like, truly became your father. And when you're saying he was not a homosexual, there were plenty of times when you found a woman in bed with him. And sometimes it would be the lady or the daughter of the mansion, the manse, she's calling it. And you would have to like help them get back to their room. But he lived kind of a lonely life. He was the epitome of the lonely genius. And because you were there with him, he had like a comrade in arms, and you believe he would have committed suicide at some point or like gotten drunk and fallen off a balcony if he had not bought you and basically adopted you. So she's fast forwarding, you're 12. She said, oh, what is that movie? The movie Paper Moon yeah, she said it's almost in a way like, I don't really remember the movie except I know it's Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal as like con artists or something. Yeah, and it was almost feeling a little bit like that. Like it was the two of you basically against the world, but it was jolly. It was like, but you weren't con artists, you were artists. However, you had to be crafty to survive and maintain the status that you desired. You saw plenty of other artists who are like the toast of the town and then they're like forgotten and in the gutter. You both knew that you had to always evolve with the social mores of the moment, always be the wittiest people around, the ones that everyone felt at home with, but not so at home. Like there was a lot of maneuvering and constantly using your wits to maintain the status that you had. But at the same time, with you in tow, he was actually more marketable. And she's like, don't get them wrong. It's not like you'll see his compositions performed at like the National Symphony Orchestra or the Metropolitan Opera. Like his stuff was like, the better part of mediocre, but he had the whole package to offer. And he had a desire to be the best, but but because of the work the two of you did, you were able to save a great deal of money that he bought a little country estate, country farm, so that instead of just being free floating with some old attic somewhere, you two had a home that you never went to, but you knew it was there. Um, and he knew your future was secure. But the last thing you wanted after a lifetime of training was to go live on a farm. I mean, he got you from a glassblower farm situation. You didn't want to end up back like that. So, okay, by the time you were 17, he was really tired of this life. He wasn't young when you met him. Like he was ready to move to this farm, and you're like, "Hey, I'm not. I'm ready to sow my wild oats." So he helped secure you with a position in an opera house in. Okay, this is where. Is it Lisbon? No, it's okay. It's in Germany, some city in Germany. Begins with an L. Um, I think it's like southwestern Germany or close to Switzerland. I need to get better at geography. He got you settled with a good opera house as part of the core, and you could dance and you could sing. Acting was not really something anyone did; they just belted out lines, and so acting and or singing and dancing was like pretty good. And you worked your way up. Uh, you learned all the lessons he had taught you all through your childhood on how to like basically rise up to the top of your A game, until eventually, you had multiple men trying to always woo you to be their courtesan sort of situation. And you were very good at playing these men sort of against you and having them, uh, like bring you a beautiful necklace and like, oh, this is so nice. Thank you. Put it on. But what I really want is to sing at the king's ball, and then they would make that happen. So you use them for like all levels of wealth and gain. And then when you had enough and you were actually doing well with your career, so you're like, ciao, guys, don't really need you. Um, Once you achieved your pinnacle of fame and well-doing, and you did some traveling around Europe, you realized how exhausting it was to travel around Europe. In these pitchy wagons on gutted roads with all kinds of temperature and roadside bandits. And you realized that having everything you wanted was just kind of like, bleh. So you went to your, adopted father's farm and lived out the rest of your life like that. Uh, and he was around for like another decade before he died. So the two of you had fun. You never married, be, although you had scores of lovers, no children, but you had like this little farm. So you had family there of the people who lived and worked on your farm, the animals, and you're like, she's saying, I really had everything I ever wished for. And then so much I could not have imagined that I wished for. But it was because she was really listening to her heart and not to what people told her she should want. Because there was nothing about this life that was even remotely traditional or appropriate. And yet it was all very beautiful and respectable. Um, so she's saying you understand why she came through to be with you in this life. Because she's saying in some ways, being with you in this life helped her relive much of her own life and gave her a new perspective on herself. So she's very grateful to you for that. Which honestly, this is like, that's not something that I usually hear from past lives. So I'm like, I don't know what happened to you in this life, but you have been doing extraordinary things, whether it feels that way to you or not. You have a great deal of extraordinary appreciation and love from those in the non-physical for both the choices you've made and the lessons you've learned and the paths you've followed. Um, and they're saying, you know that the right path is rarely the easy path. And that your ability to stop and say, what does my brain think? But what does my heart think? But what does my gut think? And how can I have all of this in alignment? They're saying that is a skill hard earned by you in this life. Does that? Okay, good. Um, you have no idea how much value and appreciation you are receiving. But I literally feel like I could cry right now from all the love that's coming through to you from those in the non-physical. And some of those are people you knew in life who have passed. Some are people, or members of your soul family. And some are like, guides, angels. But if there's anything you feel you have to forgive yourself for, there's like, do it. Because there's no one holding anything against you. At this moment, you have no karmic debt to anyone. This is important for you to understand. Any mistakes you felt you made in your life, forgive yourself on that. Some of the choices you made in life that you felt created hardships for others, look at their life choices. Look at how either they have grown since then, or if they keep floundering and repeating the same patterns, and understand you either impacted them by soul contract to impact them in this way, or they're on their path no matter what, and you don't need to worry. But they're telling me you carry burdens that are not yours to carry, and it's time to release because it's an unnecessary weight. They're saying weights, multiples. That if you were to check with the higher selves of everyone that you feel you've wronged or that you owe an apology to, every one of those higher selves say, you don't. There's nothing to forgive. There's only love for you. Do you understand that?